Welcome on in, Eagles fans, to episode 17 of the No-Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast right here on NJ.com. I'm Joe Giglio, joined by Elliot Shore-Parks and Mark Eckel, our Eagles beat reporters for NJ Advanced Media, coming off what was the worst Eagles game of the season, a 45-17 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we look forward now and really kind of question everything about this Eagles football team and the Chip Kelly regime. Elliot, we'll start with you. Kind of just give me your thoughts on Chip Kelly right now as everyone is talking about what has happened to the Eagles. A pair of 10 in 6 seasons, his first 2 years, he gets full power, and now the team just looks like they're in disarray.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to think about, 2 years ago. I always bring back to this moment for some reason with me with the Chip Kelly era, just being in the press box of Chip Kelly's first game of Monday Night Football against Washington, when his offense is running up and down the field and everyone's like, oh my God, this guy is a genius. I mean, this is going to go phenomenally. And then that year it did. And just to compare the mood from that game, just really, a little over 2 years ago to the game on Sunday against the Buccaneers. And just, the game itself was ugly, but just in a larger picture, the whole feeling there. It was gloomy. Like, the fans were leaving. They were getting blown out. People were mad at Chip Kelly. This was their second bad loss in a row. They did, and it just felt so much like the arrow is trending down with this team. And it's hard to sometimes differentiate if it's like, is the arrow trending down with this group of players, this exact year of this exact, team, or is the arrow trending down with Chip? And the issue is they're so hard to separate now because Chip is the Eagles. And Mark can attest to this, every single inch of the NovaCare and everything about this team is Chip. He's got complete control. So, I remain optimistic about Chip, which is not something a lot of fans do. I think there are still some fans out there that are very optimistic about Chip. And I am in, the camp of thinking that Chip is still going to be able to turn this around and be a winning coach. But, man, on Sunday, it was ugly. And I said to Mark, I think we were talking in the press box, or I think maybe today at practice, it was kind of one of my first moments where I thought, like, what if this doesn't work out with Chip? And I never really thought that. So remain optimistic, but I guess some doubt is creeping in a little bit.
Yeah, I think with you and everyone else, there's doubt creeping in. Mark, you've seen a lot of these coaches come and go through the years. Andy stayed a long time, but you've been around the team with coaches that obviously haven't lasted close to that kind of length. Where are you on Chip now? I know you've been supportive of him as a coach, and but obviously Sunday against the Bucs, that was an ugly effort in almost every way possible.
Yeah, I've been very supportive of Chip. Of all the coaches I've covered, I think 6 of them now. I still say he's the smartest guy I've been around. I'm not waiting from that. Maybe he's too smart for his own good. Sometimes I don't know if that's possible. I never think you could be too smart or too intelligent, but it's bad. And it's not just the Tampa loss was awful, obviously, beyond awful. And coming on the heels of the Dolphin loss, which in a lot of ways, the score wasn't nearly as bad. They only lost by a point. But the way they lost the Dolphins, I used to always say I'd rather lose 45-17 than 20. Because you lose like that and you just walk away and say, wow, we lost. Okay, let's forget about it. When you lose one of them, you could pick out 100 plays during the game and say, if we did that. So, sometimes that's worse. But putting them back to back is just – I was trying to think of the last time I witnessed back-to-back losses of this magnitude, and I can't remember. They were, and when you throw in the fact they were a touchdown favorite in both the games, adds to it. Because people say, "Oh, well, you remember when they were?" Yeah, but they were bad then, like Marion Campbell's year, or at the end of Kotite, or Ray Rhodes when they went 3-13. Yeah, they were terrible, but they were 20-point under, not 20, but 10-point underdogs in those games. They were supposed to lose, and they did. These games they were supposed to win. Come on, after that Dallas game, that's another thing. If you go back 3 weeks, they beat Dallas in overtime, and Bradford plays like his only good game in a long time. People were excited, and wow, we beat the Cowboys, and we're rolling now. We got 3 easy games coming up. Well, you're 2/3 of the way through those quote unquote three easy games, and you're 0-2. So I don't know where they go from here. I know they go to Detroit, but I don't know how many more games they win this year. I really don't. I think this year's a wash at this point.
The game kind of reminded me of, I think it was 2 years ago. It was Reed's, or 3 years ago. Reed's last season. It was kind of my first. I was just kind of starting to get on the beat seriously. I remember that loss to the Falcons. I think it was coming off the bye, and they lost
Yes.
to the Falcons at home, and they got blown out. And I remember the mood there was similar to the one on Sunday, where it just kind of felt like the end. Like this is like the chip era is not over, and what we're gonna discuss at length. But yesterday, Sunday just really felt like that's it. Like the season's over. Like there's no coming back from that. And the crazy thing is, in theory, they could. They're only a game out with 6 to go. I mean, even if there was 3 games to go, they would still have a half decent shot. But I don't think this team has shown literally nothing, not even in terms of skill level. I mean, I do believe they're a skilled team. I honestly believe that. I think the defense had a bad day yesterday, clearly. I still think the defense is one of the, top 15-ish units in the league. I think they have talent on offense. But, I don't know. This team just doesn't seem like they have any heart and any leadership. And so, are they they're only 1 game out with 6 to go? Yes. But, they do absolutely nothing to inspire you to think that they have it in them to bounce back and win this. And maybe they'll prove me wrong, but I don't see it anymore. And I had seen it, through the ugly loss to Dallas when they lost 20-10. I was like, it's all right. They'll be okay. When they dropped to 1-3, I was like, they got this. But now I'm just like, 10 games in, they got no backbone. They got no leadership in that locker room.
You're right, Elliot. And like you said, and I wrote this even before the Tampa Bay game, that the one thing this team did have, or at least I thought they had, and Chip Kelly's teams, it's still a short sample by some 3 years, but they were resilient. You're right. They looked awful against Dallas early in the year, but they came back and beat the Jets on the road the next week.
Right.
Which was, all right, so they did that. They were 1-3, and oh my God, they lost to that Redskin game. They bounced back and played very well against the Saints and Giants to get to 3-3. So when they lost to Miami, and it was a gut wrenching, no reason to lose game, blown a 13-point lead, I thought, all right, they're going to show their resiliency again, come out and beat Tampa Bay, and be in first place by the end of the day. But no, just the opposite. They rolled over and died against Tampa Bay. So I don't. Again, football is a crazy sport, and this year has been the craziest in my 30 years of covering it. Not just the Eagles, but the entire league. So anything can happen. But I'm with you, and I don't see this team winning more than a couple games the rest of the way.
And what's crazy is the whole thing with Chip taking over control this past offseason, and a lot of the moves he's made has been about building culture, right? The Deshaun move, LaShawn, Evan Mathis with his contract. But right now, I mean, if you ask me what these teams' biggest issue is, I'd say number 1, quarterback. But number 2, I think is a culture issue. I mean, some of these guys they bring in, they're all good guys. They're all nice people. But guys like Byron Maxwell, guys like DeMarco Murray, and really guys like Sam Bradford. I mean, these are, those are the 3 most important guys on your team in a lot of ways. I mean, DeMarco gave a big deal to. Maxwell's got that massive contract. Bradford's your quarterback. And yeah, they're all nice guys. And, Bradford had that meeting in the showers with his teammates, which I guess was cool. But I mean, do any of them, I mean, Mark, you're around them as well. I don't think any of them really seem like rah-rah guys. And leading up to that Buccaneers game, you were making fun of me a little bit about how much that Jameis Winston video from the week before where
only because you got so impressed by it.
Yeah, I did. But to me, that was and for those listening that haven't seen it, there was a video of Jameis Winston after the Buccaneers win over the Cowboys where he's basically after the win just giving a rah-rah speech, and all his teammates are listening. You can see Lovie Smith looking on. And it's 30 seconds. But to me, that video was everything. That was all of the Eagles' problems wrapped into one. 1, they don't have a quarterback. 2, they don't have anybody that would give that type of speech. And 3, they definitely don't have a quarterback that would combine and also give that type of speech. And we talked about this against me and Mark did in the press box. You can just see when you get a quarterback, everything changes, right? And so that's why when people say, and should Chip be fired? Does Chip have a big problem? All Chip needs is a quarterback. Once Chip gets that guy, that leader, that total encompassing franchise quarterback, he'll be fine because Chip can coach. I mean, Chip knows how to run the Eagles. The issue is they don't have a quarterback, and because of that, they got no leadership. And so the team falls apart quickly, which is what we saw against the Buccaneers.
Yeah, we did. For a little clarity, anyone listening, if you may be listening to this after Thursday's game, after Thanksgiving Day against the Lions, we're recording this on the Monday right after the Tampa Bay game. So, but the bigger point remains that Chip Kelly
I'm sure a lot
regime,
of this will still stand after.
Right, no matter what happens, even if the Eagles go out there and beat the Lions.
They're not getting a quarterback between now and then.
No, they're not. So all of the points stand and all of the questions about Chip stand. I guess the question I have off of what you were just saying, Elliot, is what changed here? Now, obviously, Chip becoming in power was a big change, but the Eagles were 19-9 in his first 28 games, and we can go back. They didn't have a quarterback then either. I mean, they got a lot out of Nick Foles in 2013, but they've never had a franchise quarterback under Chip Kelly. Yet they were 19-9 his first 19 and let's do the math here. But they were 19-9, and then they're 5-9 since. They're 5-9 since last Thanksgiving. I mean, what changed? He didn't have a quarterback then. They were a good team his first year and 3 quarters. Since then, they've been a bad team. I mean, is this a deeper problem than just the quarterback position?
They didn't have a quarterback, but what they did have was they had Nick Foles, who played out of his mind, who played like a franchise quarterback for, what'd they go, I think, 8-2 with him or something like that. So if you take away that 8-2 from the 18-9 or whatever, I mean, they really, since Chip's gotten here, he's only had one good stretch of quarterback play. Last year, even when they moved to 5-2, and I think they might have went to 6-2 with Foles and then one game of Sanchez, they were still getting, the quarterback play wasn't great, but they were still getting kind of good quarterback play, and at least Foles was considered the guy at that point. So Foles did have a good stretch, but, I think really, and I think it was this past offseason, I mean, you make all these types of moves, and we've seen it with the Dream Team a few years ago. I don't know how much you can compare the two, but when you just throw guys together, it's tough. And I think a lot of us overlook that. But, I mean, if you said to me, like, let's say Howie Roseman did this past offseason. Like, we knew Howie made all those moves, and Chip was just the coach. I would be saying to you right now, well, the obvious problem is Howie. Like, Chip can coach. There's no doubt Chip can coach. I mean, he's had a top 5 offense the past 2 seasons. He was a great college coach. Even though he never won a championship, he was within a few points of it. He had the good start to the past 2 seasons. If you would have told me that Howie made them bring in Bradford, bring in DeMarco Murray, overpay for Byron Maxwell, up to this point, completely botched the first 2 rounds of the draft from this past draft, I'd be like, well, the obvious issue is Howie. But the issue is that it wasn't Howie. It was Chip. Chip made all those moves. So I think Chip kind of dug his own grave to a certain point, and the preseason masked that a little bit. But now he's coaching a team that realistically, why should anybody expect to win? I mean, you got Bradford throwing to Miles Austin, and it's 2015. I mean, that wasn't even a good combination 4 years ago, let alone now. So I think that's really what's the undoing was maybe Chip shouldn't have been given full control. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, but it certainly hasn't worked out.
No, it hasn't. I mean, they've been one of the worst teams. I mean, 3 of the games they've lost at home this year. I mean, they're the type of games that just make a fan base lose their mind. You're paying all that money for season tickets, and you watch that Cowboys game in week 2. You watch the Dolphins game a couple weeks ago. You watch the Tampa game, and those are just, I mean, the efforts, whether it be effort perspective or just execution, are just so bad. Now what, Mark? As we move forward here, whether or not they beat the Lions or what they do in December, there's so many issues with Chip Kelly and this team right now moving forward. Now what? What happens moving forward here? I mean, are we witnessing the end of this thing?
No, you're not witnessing the end. You're witnessing what happens when a guy with inexperience has to make decisions without anyone else with any experience around him to guide him. And I think you have to look at each individual, Elliot says, they brought in this guy. I think you have to look at each individual case and make a case as to why it didn't work. Or you asked, why didn't it work? How did they go from 19-9? Well, Bradford, they took a gamble. They gambled, they thought, and you have to sometimes. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals took a big gamble on Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer was done. He was a bum in Oakland. He was good in Cincinnati. Went to Oakland. It looked like his career was long done. He was a shot fighter. Carson Palmer has Arizona playing pretty well, just like Arizona did a decade ago or whenever it was when they Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner was great with St. Louis. He went to the Giants. He looked like he was done. He resurfaces in the desert and takes them to a Super Bowl, which they darn near won. So it was a gamble. Was the difference between Bradford and Palmer and Warner was they were good. They had history. They were very good quarterbacks at one time. Got old, whatever, didn't look, bounced back. Bradford was never good. He had potential. He was the number 1 pick of the draft out of Oklahoma, but he was never good. Let's be honest. He won Rookie of the Year. That must have been a bad rookie class because his numbers weren't even that great. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like he was Michael Carter Williams. He was the best rookie of a bad bunch of rookies. That's what he was. I mean, if you look at it, he wasn't great in 2010. He was okay. There was again, you saw potential. Bradford's the potential guy, but it's 6 years into this now. So Bradford was a gamble that he lost. He rolled the dice and it came up with snake eyes. Guys like Maxwell and Murray bother me a little bit because. And I like Maxwell. I do. I like Byron Maxwell. He just happened to come up at the right time. He was in the right place at the right time. He's coming off a team that was very good, 2 Super Bowls back to back. He's a key part of that team, and he becomes a free agent with not any other cornerbacks of that of his caliber or of his. That have gone to Super Bowl. I mean, the other one was Revis, but obviously Revis was either going back to New England or going to the Jets. So he wasn't even really a free agent. So you had Byron Maxwell as the guy. So you had to overpay him to get him. But I don't want this to come across as I'm killing Byron Maxwell, but he won a Super Bowl. So he achieved the pinnacle of what every player wants to do, win a Super Bowl. But he didn't get paid yet. Now he got paid. So he got his Super Bowl. He's got his money. 4 and 6. Oh, okay. What are you going? I don't think it bothers him a whole lot that they're 4 and 6. DeMarco Murray, and that again wasn't. No one thought when the Dallas draft that DeMarco Murray wasn't supposed to be a great one. He was okay. He's a good player. He played well at Oklahoma. No one ever picked him to lead the league in rushing, but he did, and he did it in his contract year. Wow, what a thing! And now, boom, he gets paid. And again, I think they have too many guys now. They added too many guys that it's funny. Jeffrey Lurie used to use this line when he first bought the team, and we used to laugh at him about it. But he used to say, "We want young ascending players. That's what we're looking for. Young ascending players." Those Maxwell, Bradford, Murray, they're not young ascending players. They're guys that needed to get paid. Well, not Bradford. Bradford's been getting paid since he came out of Oklahoma, but I wouldn't call any of them ascending. They're kind of flatliners, and that's how the team's playing now. I mean, Kiko Alonso, another one now, he may have been one of those young ascending players, but his knee's shot. He can't even run. He can't move. So it was just a bad mix. Like everything that could have gone wrong this offseason of the moves they made, other than Walter Thurman, which was the least talked about move of all of them, right? That was an afterthought. I think he signed the same day as somebody else, didn't he? Oh, do you remember?
I'm sorry. I don't remember. No, I don't remember. But you're right.
But it was a double
under
the radar, yeah.
Yeah, that was the one we said, they run Walter Thurman. Okay, he'll compete for the nickel job or something. He'll be all right. That has been by far and away the best move of the offseason. So, but I'm sorry, I got off track. Where did they go? Go in the tank and get a good pick and start over next year.
That's kind of the question. Like, I still believe in Chip Kelly, the head coach. I do. Too. But do we believe in Chip Kelly, the general manager, going forward? Like what do you do? So this offseason, I asked this Mark a few days ago. Like, let's just go out on a limb and guess Eagles don't make the playoffs, right? And honestly, even
if they do. That's a big limb, Elliot, huh?
Yeah. And honestly, though, even if they do, I still don't think it should change how they attack this offseason. Bradford's not the answer. No. For whatever reason, Bradford lucks into a 4-2 over the next 6 games, which would be a minor miracle. But let's just say he somehow does it. Bradford's played roughly 60 games in his NFL career now. These next 6 games are not the answer. So no matter what, I think what you have to do this offseason has been decided. Whatever happens these next 6 games, you can't let that impact what you do. So going into this offseason, what does Chip have to do, and can he be trusted to do it? I think if you're Jeffrey Lurie, that might be what you have to ask yourself. And I think that answer is still yes. There's no way you remove Chip. Maybe you bring in a vet. Maybe you say to Chip, do you want to bring in more of a seasoned guy to work with you and Ed Manowitz, who is also very young. I mean, him and Chip, Chip's been coaching a long time, but Chip's only been coaching the NFL for two years and 6 games, or 2 years and 10 games.
Neither one of those guys. I don't mean to interrupt. Neither one of those guys. I think this is where you're going. they don't have NFL experience. When the Rams call and say, we'll give you Bradford for Foles in a second, neither one of them, they look at each other and say, what do you think? Oh, okay, sure. They needed a veteran guy, a guy who'd been in the league 20 years or so to say, whoa, wait a minute. We'll give him Foles for Bradford. We ain't giving him a second. Call him back and say, we'll give you Foles and a 6 or so, and then we'll meet him in the middle at a 4 or something. Don't just give away a second.
And nobody's that kind of goes along with that kind of goes along with the idea that the McCoy for Alonso deal was apparently completed within a half an hour. I mean, those kind of deals usually take days, if not weeks, to come together to get the appropriate, fairness in terms of the deal and everything else. And that one seemed like it came together in a few minutes.
And I think maybe that Bills move, as you just said, Joe, is part of the problem. I mean, Chip has always really had success as a coach in his career. I mean, you look, he moves up the ranks very quickly. He was great at Oregon, came within a few points winning the championship, really built that program into one of the top college programs out there. Came to the NFL, was highly sought after, immediately became one of the highest paid coaches, won the division his first year. Last year, they don't make the playoffs, but they still finished 10-6 and have a top 5 offense. I mean, Chip had every reason to believe that when he was given control over personnel, that he would be able to do it and do it well. And I think you saw that confidence and really that arrogance when he hired a guy like Ed Manowitz, who, as Eckel knows from talking to different people around the league, is well thought of. This wasn't just it was out of nowhere, but people do know who this guy is, even though he's young. But between the two, they only have, this is Manowitz's first time ever doing this job, and Chip's been a head coach for 2 years, and it's his first year in control of personnel. So they really didn't have a lot of experience. And I think that showed, and kind of that arrogance showed when you're making deals like the Bills one, because, you're on the phone with the Bills and they say, we'll give you Kiko, and you just go, boom, done. And you trade the franchise all-time leading rusher in a matter of minutes. Now, maybe they knew what his value was and they were on the verge of cutting him. Who knows? But the problem is the whole offseason never really seemed well thought out. I mean, you trade for Bradford, which...
Oh, it was thought out. I disagree 100%. But okay. The thought was this, and you know where I'm going here, Elliot. The thought was, we got to get Marcus Mariota.
But maybe that thought, and I agree that was the thought, but as you just said a few minutes ago, maybe they need a veteran guy in the ear to say, look,
we're not going to get Mariota,
right. You can try to get Mariota, and if you get him, that would be awesome, and do whatever it takes, but you can't let yourself fall in a situation where you have Sam Bradford as your quarterback. So maybe maybe the combination of Ed and Chip needed someone to say, look, you're not going to get Mariota. Or they needed someone to say, look, why are you giving DeMarco Murray all this money? I mean, I know his cap hit's low this year, but especially when the DeMarco move seemed so weird because, they tried to sign Frank Gore. It's almost like, you tell yourself you're going to spend $3,000 on a car and then the one you want's gone. So you go and you buy a $50,000 car. It's like, well, why didn't you just buy the $50,000 one to start if you're willing to spend and you liked it that much? So that's kind of what the whole offseason seemed like. But again, they get to camp and they look really good. And I've said it a bunch of times on this podcast, this is my youth and inexperience showing. I bought in and I said, wow, this team looks good. And they smoked Green Bay. And Bradford had, the best game. Right. 10. Yeah, we'll always have Green Bay, right? And so everything seemed so good. And I think Chip, and I remember before this season, one of the reasons I thought this team would be good was the feeling around the NovaCare was just one of such optimism. Like there was just a feeling of like, this team's really good. Everybody's feeling, like everything's going great. It was just a good feeling around the NovaCare for being there every day during training camp and traveling with the team. And just to compare it to now, I mean, this is, Monday, the day after the Buccaneers lost, the locker room's deserted. There's no one in there. Guys like Bradford, Murray, leaders of this team, they're not talking. And I know they're not supposed to talk till Tuesday or whatever, but you know what? Your team's 4-6. You just got basically beat down at home. Why don't you talk a day early and try to inspire some confidence in your teammates? You talk to the players. There's no players only meeting. And, we're at practice for the first 20 minutes. They don't look too enthused. And it's just amazing the contrast in moods between now and the beginning of the year.
Elliot, I'm glad you brought up the feelings because I feel like the fan base mirrors those feelings. The summer was so exciting. People were so pumped up, talking about how good this team could be, talking about Chip Kelly and what he did and all this stuff. And now it's the exact opposite. And you guys know it. I mean, whether you're listening to talk radio or you're listening to our podcast or people are interacting with you guys, whether it be social media or reading your pieces and commenting and whatever they do. I mean, people interact with you too. and me all the time about the
Sometimes
Eagles.
actually in person too, Joe. I'm old. I actually still talk to people like, well, I don't have to do it on computers.
What's that like? I missed that, Mark.
It's kind of fun sometimes, You actually go out and meet people, talk to them. Yeah, it's different.
So you know it, whether it be in person or,
Yes.
or whatever this internet thing is. You know it. I mean, fans are upset. So the question I have for both,
beside themselves.
right? The question I have for both of you is, why do you think people have turned on Chip Kelly so quickly here? I mean, he had success pretty quickly. He's only been here less than 3 years, and yet almost every other person I talk to, in person or not, wants this guy out. I agree with you. I don't think he's out. I agree with both of you. I don't think Lurie's going to fire him. I don't think they're going to get rid of him after 1 year of giving him power.
And I don't think he's going to leave.
I don't think so
Here's
either.
what it is, Joe. Here's what it is.
Go ahead.
Chip Kelly to Eagle fans is the prettiest girl in school that they wanted to go out with for years. And they got her. Oh, my God, she said yes. I mean, that's who everybody wanted. When they fired Andy Reid, if you asked any fan or everybody, you can get it. Oh, my, Chip Kelly. But he spurned him at first. He wasn't going to come out. He's going to stay at Oregon. So you're looking at the Gus Bradleys of the world. Nobody wanted him. You were trying to seriously. He was a defensive coordinator from Seattle. Big deal. Chip Kelly was the pretty girl. He was the prom queen. He was the, oh my God, we can get Chip. And then you got him. And you're 1 year for, oh my God, this is going to be great. 10-6 the first year, playoffs. I'll say this forever. Last year, the team was better last year than they were in 2013. I know they didn't make the playoffs. I don't care. That was a better team. They lost to better teams. It was just a better team. Last year was better than 2013. The record was the same. They lost to Aaron Rodgers last year, not to Scott Tolson. You know what I'm saying? Everything went their way in 2013. I mean, every team they played had a guy missing. They didn't have anybody hurt the whole year, basically, except Vic, and that worked out good for him because Foles came in. Last year was better. So things, in my opinion, things were getting better. Now, all of a sudden, the pretty girl isn't so pretty. I mean, and you're hurt by it. Like, what happened? Like, this is my dream girl. We're going to get married, and we're going to live happily ever after. We're going to get that Super Bowl we never had before. And now it's like, no, what do you mean? You're seeing somebody? I don't. And you're hurt. Fans are hurt. Their feelings are hurt. Their hearts are broken, and that's why they're turning on.
Well, I think another thing is, I mean, like, who else is there to be mad about? I mean, you guys know, like in Eagles, I mean, in Philadelphia, the Eagles are number one by far. And it's not like they can look at the Eagles and go, you know what, Howie's not doing a good job. Or you know what, we got to move on from Foles. I mean, this is it. This is Chip. I mean, Chip wanted complete control. Well, there's no one else to be mad at.
And that's part of it, too.
You can't be mad at Lurie. I mean, like Jeffrey Lurie. I mean, what's he supposed to do? And he's not really involved. I mean, he's involved, but he's got nothing to do with any of this other than giving Chip full control. So Chip's doing it all. So when they win and, they get back from, when they have that big win over the Giants, and what was the score of that game? They killed him in that game. It was on a few weeks ago in prime time.
27-7.
Yeah, and everybody's after that game. All the fans are like, so much for everyone saying he was just a college coach. And, look, I guess his offense really is broken. And, it was this feeling of like, look, everyone that was making fun of Chip nationally, like, take that. Like, this is still our guy. He can coach. We're coming back. This is a bad division. Bradford, still kind of sucks, but whatever, right? So,
that was you.
Yeah, that was me, right? But my point is, when things are going well with the Eagles, Chip's the man, and people love him. And more times than not, since Chip's been here, things have been better. But this is probably the ugliest it's ever been with the Eagles. I mean, there was those 2 losses his first year back-to-back the division. But as Mark pointed out, you had Matt Barkley in one of those games, and that was Chip's first year, right? In both games, right? But this time around, I mean, this was the ugliest it's ever been for Chip. So it'll be really interesting to see, over these next 6 games. I almost don't even care what their record is. You just want to see the team compete, play hard, and just show signs of moving forward at this point, and just looking like a team that plays hard, and looking like, there's more guys that of this 53-man roster, you're going to end up keeping more of them than you're going to get rid of, because what you got to avoid at this point is another major overhaul this offseason. You can't go where you're getting, 5 new starters on offense, a few new starters on defense. You're completely changing your depth. You got to get a new quarterback. There's no avoiding that. So that's going to happen. But that's what you need over these next 6 games. You just need for there to be hope again. And that's really what Chip needs to build up.
He does, and he's lost a lot of that, like you said, and the fan base is skeptical is using a like term. People are just upset at this guy. So, Elliot, you just said there they need a new quarterback. They can't have a complete overhaul. Let's look forward here to the Chip Kelly era. Assuming he does stay, assuming this thing doesn't completely go off the rails the next 6 weeks and they don't, go in a different direction, or this thing doesn't go in a crazy direction. If he's here next year and he gets a new quarterback, I mean, next year will be year 4, Mark, of the Chip Kelly era. Usually when you get to year 4 in the NFL, if you haven't won a playoff game, if you're coming off a losing season, the seat is red hot. Where do we see this going forward? I mean, if he gets a quarterback, logic would say they have to give him a couple years with his quarterback. I mean, do we kind of reset the Chip Kelly timeline now? Where are you with that?
Well, it depends who he gets. If he drafts Paxton Lynch from Memphis with his first, like let's say I mean, let's be honest, they're heading toward a pretty good pick right now.
Yeah.
So if they get a high enough pick and their first pick is a quarterback, and I'm just throwing Paxton Lynch's name out there because he's probably the best of the college quarterbacks right now this year. Yeah, you got to give him a little bit of time. You don't give him forever, but you give him a little bit of time. But if he signs a veteran, and I don't know, take your pick, Kaepernick, RG3, Jay Cutler, Matthew Stafford, I don't know, whoever. Then no, you don't. The veterans got to come in and win. I mean, it's funny. One of the few cordial, nice conversations Andy Reid and I ever had in his 14 years. He gave me a great quote. He used to do one-on-ones with the beat guys, and like right before the season, and we were talking about Donovan, and he said something about, I think it was right after a couple coaches left and whatever got jobs, and he said he compared it to Brett Favre in Green Bay, and he said, when we were all in Green Bay, we all went on and got jobs and did well, and we would all laugh and say, it's all because of number 4. And now here things are happening, and it's all because of number 5. And, a quarterback can make a coach look so much better. You get a good quarterback,
Well, again, it ain't happening because of number 7. I can tell you that much.
7's not getting anyone any jobs anytime soon.
He's going to cost some people some jobs.
It's that way too. Yeah, a lot of quarterbacks have cost coaches their jobs, but I mean, it really does. You get the right quarterback. I mean, again, I hate to bring back the Mariota thing, but Mariota came out a year too early.
Or a year too. Yeah. I mean, just, imagine how different everything would be if they had Mariota. Just everything would be so different. But they don't. And that just shows. I mean, maybe they needed someone to say, like, you're not going to get Mariota, man. Like, I know you want Mariota, but it's not happening.
If you really want him, make the offer. I don't know. I mean, we'll never know exactly how that came down, but you knew it was going to be hard. You knew it was going to be very, very difficult to move up from 20 to 1 or 2, and they didn't, and they couldn't. But I mean, that would have made things. You're right. That would have made things. I mean, look at Tampa Bay, and I'm not even. That they were the worst team in football last year, right? They got the first pick. They had to be. That's how they got the first pick. No, they're no longer. But they're in the playoff race right now.
Better than the Eagles,
right? Yeah, and they just showed them, and they beat them by 4 scores.
I mean, they're in the wild card. They're in the wild card. They could. I mean, I don't know what they have left on their schedule, but they're right in the mix at 5-5. They're in the wild card picture. I mean, Atlanta's going the wrong way. Atlanta's 6-4. They lost 4 in a row, 3 in a row. I guess 4 out of 5 and 3 in a row. So Atlanta's going the wrong way. It wouldn't shock me if Tampa Bay pass. It's going to be what Minnesota's in the mix. Obviously, Seattle's coming on, but for Tampa Bay to even be in a playoff conversation after going 2-14 last year is remarkable. And yes, it's not just having Jameis Winston, but that's the big part of it. You get your quarterback I say this all the time about the Green Bay Packers are a decent team with a great quarterback. And that's why they're in the playoff mix every year, because they haven't take Aaron Rodgers off that team as they did a couple years ago, and they couldn't beat the Eagles with Nick Foles, right? I mean, you get the quarterback, he hides so many other mistakes. He hides so many other weaknesses. And I saw it with Donovan. Donovan won games. People talk about this wide receiving being bad. Do they forget James Thrash and Todd Pinkston and Freddie Mitchell? The Eagles went to championship games with that group. because they had
Brown.
McNabb.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, but they had Donovan McNabb. So I'd rather have the quarterback with a bunch of okay guys than a bunch of great guys and Sam Bradford as my quarterback, because you're not going to win that way.
And that's really ultimately what's going to decide Chip Kelly's fate, both as a head coach and a general manager. If he can figure out a way to get a quarterback this offseason, this time next year we'll be talking about how ridiculous it was to think that they were going to fire Chip Kelly. If he doesn't get that guy, a year from now we'll be talking about, hey, you think Nick Saban's going to leave Alabama?
They won't go that route again.
Yeah, well, but maybe not. Who knows?
Let's wrap with this. Last one for you guys as we kind of look forward to the rest of the season. And we're not going to talk about predictions because it's a waste of time. But you guys were there on Sunday. You were there after that game. What kind of sense did you get from this team? I mean, there are teams that rally from 4-6. There are teams that rally from bad weeks. The Eagles sounded to me from watching on TV, being home for that game and listening to different quotes and reading different quotes. They sounded like a team that's maybe starting to resign themselves to the fact that they're not very good. I didn't hear that earlier this season. Did you get that sense, Elliot, that they feel this is what they are now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think at this case, you're talking best case scenario is 8-8. I think if they can go finish 8-8, that would be a good finish for this team.
It might win a division.
Yeah, I mean, but more realistically, I mean, they might beat the Lions. They might do it. I would be surprised, I guess, at this point. They might beat them. But then you got the Patriots. They're going to get. That's going to be ugly. And then you have the Bills coming here. That's a team that's going to play hard. I don't think the Eagles will beat them. I mean, Redskins, Giants, they're all playing pretty well. So the schedule is not easy the rest of the way. I mean, the Eagles are not as good as, the Cardinals. The Eagles, there's no team left on the schedule that the Eagles should beat, put it that way. So is this team going to have it in them to beat a team they're not supposed to, and they're going to have a spirited effort? I don't think so. I mean, I'm certainly not getting that vibe at all.
Yeah, me either. And what's scary when you look at this season? Counting the Lions game as their 11th game, the Eagles were favored to win 9 of their 11 games this year. Think about that. They were supposed
like 2011, just like the Dream Team. That team was favored all the time.
They were supposed to win 9 of their. They were after Detroit. If form held, they were supposed to be 9-2. Man, 9-2. We're talking about getting home field advantage, right? We're talking about getting at least a bye. And Carolina would still be 10-0, but that was the only game they were underdogs. To Carolina, and one other game. I forget what the other one was.
Well, here's what I'll say to kind of encompass everything we've been talking about.
The Jets game were the underdogs against the Jets.
Jets, yep, and they won that one. One of the ones they're underdogs, they won.
I mean, here's again, we're talking about, is Chip Kelly the problem with this team, right? And Mark, you can speak to this definitely more than I can. You've covered the NFL, just as long as I've been alive. The two key parts of any team: head coach, quarterback. Yep. Right? You gotta have good head coach. You gotta have a good quarterback. The Eagles, with Chip Kelly the past 2 seasons, not including this year, won a division, went 20-12, and were competitive. Bradford, without Chip Kelly, was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. You bring Bradford in, he works with Chip, and look what's happened. So you have to me, it's simple. You get rid of Bradford, and I think Chip can get this thing turned around. But the biggest mistake they can make is recommitting themselves to Bradford this offseason and, talking themselves into it somehow. He's not the answer. If you're talking about just purely if you should fire Chip or not, Chip is still the guy to turn this thing around, I believe.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake he could make is pick, again, like you guys have said it here on this episode, picking the next quarterback has to be the right quarterback. Otherwise, it's over.
Yes.
Yep.
Whether it's a rookie or a veteran, it's got to be right. And that's where Chip, I think, made a mistake. And again, this might have been, what happened? That fluke Foles year, those fluky games where he was really good. And we know he's not that good now. He's behind Case Keenum, for God's sake. But there were some quarterbacks in that. Now, Chip's first year, he comes in. He probably wanted a quarterback. The year he had the 4th pick. But there weren't any quarterbacks that. That was the worst quarterback draft in the history of drafts.
Geno Smith was the first one selected, right?
E.J. Manuel was even worse.
And then Geno Smith, and they both stink.
Yeah, they were the 2 best, and they both. I mean, that was just bad luck that the Eagles had a chance with the 4th pick. The 4th pick, you could get normally if there's a good quarterback, you got a good chance of getting them. Well, there weren't any good quarterbacks, So he got stuck. So he took Lane Johnson, good player, worked out okay for there. But so he had no chance of getting a quarterback that year. So he had to roll the dice that he was dealt, or play the cards he was dealt. Then the second year, Foles looks so good, he goes to the Pro Bowl for God's, he wins the MVP at a Pro Bowl. So you don't take a Teddy Bridgewater when he's available,
or Derek Carr,
or Derek Carr. They were both there, but it probably was the right move looking back with 2020 hindsight. Yes, they should have taken it, whichever one they liked better. That's who they should have taken. And then you have your mix. You have every good coach in history almost has had the coach and quarterback, whether it's going back to, Jimmy Johnson and Troy Aikman, Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, Mike Holmgren and Brett Favre, Andy Reid, and now they didn't accomplish as much, but they did. They were good. And Eagles talk. Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb. I mean, you have that. Chip hasn't had it. Chip had Nick Foles, Mike Vick, who he inherited it, who was near the end. Nick Foles, who he never really wanted. Then Bradford, he takes a gamble. Like we said, he took a gamble and lost. So looking back, it would have been nice to have and I'm not even sold on Bridgewater, but I'd like to see him here now.
Yeah, drafting Marcus Smith over Teddy Bridgewater does feel like a mistake, huh?
A little bit.
Well, I think Bridgewater has one more tackle than him right now. He has they're at least tied.
So the Eagles here, 4-6 at the recording of this podcast. They'll move on. You guys will be in Detroit for Thanksgiving. We'll reconvene after the holiday, and we'll see where the Eagles are at then. But obviously, the debate's going to stand for a while. Win or lose against the Lions and what they do the rest of the season. The Chip Kelly era is under real question for the first time. So, we'll see how it plays out. But this is not what I expected to be talking about after the 10th game of the season, guys. But this is where we're at.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it should be a fun Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Eagles fans. Enjoy it. Elliot, thanks for doing this, man.
Yep, talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Joe. Take care.
And thanks to all of you for listening to episode 17 of the No-Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast right here on NJ.com. Make sure to follow the show at the No-Huddle Show on Twitter. We'll tweet out all the different episodes. And then, of course, we'll be back soon, and we'll do it again and talk Eagles football and whatever the future is of Chip Kelly right here on the No-Huddle Show.